This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Everyone is talking about AI right now. It's making it easier than ever to create content, generate images, edit videos, and launch campaigns faster than we could have imagined just a few years ago. But while the tools have become more accessible, one question remains. Does easier creation actually lead to better storytelling? Today's guests are helping brands navigate that exact challenge. Through a blend of creative direction, filmmaking, and AI-enabled production, YBA is helping companies create cinematic quality content at a speed and scale that traditional production models simply couldn't match. Joining me today are Jay, CEO, and Creative Director Sean, CTO, and Matthew Toborov, who leads strategic partnerships at YBA. We're diving into the future of content creation, where AI fits into storytelling, what brands are getting wrong, which sometimes they always are, and what the next 5 years could look like for creative production. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining. It's so fun to have you.
Thanks, Sacha.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start from the beginning, the state of creativity. Everyone seems to have access to some AI tool now, but if everyone can create content, what actually becomes the differentiator?
Chef.
That's a great question, and it's definitely true. Everyone can create content now. The bar for being a creator or filmmaker has been lowered. However, what that means is that the bar for good storytelling or good visuals and like creating good stuff has gotten a lot higher. So just because everyone can make something doesn't mean they're going to make good stuff. Everyone can play the guitar, but they're not a rock star performing at concerts. So it's a similar parallel here.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that you're saying that because everyone, I think everyone either has, two ways of looking at AI. It's the fear mongering that, a lot of folks are talking about, but then there's also this aspect of so many great things that are happening. I was at a conference the other day and somebody was saying, we haven't had so many coders, that have just come out of the woodwork since the launch of, AI and Claude, co-work and so on. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, and we were talking about this right before we got on the podcast. When we're talking about, with prospects or clients, I try not to mention AI at all, except for the lead-in of how this came about for the three of us, because there's now like a fourth person at the table. Because all of a sudden there's this misapprehension. I mean, AI, like Jay said, anybody can go to the store and buy a guitar. Anybody can, access AI is everywhere. A lot of what people see isn't necessarily real AI, generative AI, but AI is downloadable at pretty affordable segmentation for everybody to get. You cannot remove the human layer. I mean, at YBA, its tools don't create, people do.
Yeah, because you have the heart in terms of the delivery of why people are doing what they're doing, which AI is not going to be able to pick up.
No, and I think also, we're always looking, and these guys really are their comprehension and ability to navigate these systems were, as great as it is, and it's changing. And Jay and Sean can talk a lot more to this than I can, but they're changing all the time, right? And what people see like on Twitter or on Instagram as like, here's your AI, like no more needing to do those marketing presentations, like your whole marketing plan done with Claude. That's not real, and it's just, none of that is actually real. You cannot remove. It's just a great assistive tool that when you actually get to the level of what we're doing, we're walking in and pitching clients that are used to spending $15, $20, $75, $100,000 for similar type quality. We can't show them, and the stability, and it's great questions for them. Stability of the stuff to create content is very, very unstable. Yeah. So what they have to do to navigate that, you got to be a pretty good guitarist. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Unless you get hit on the head and a past life all of a sudden just enters into you and you become the best world-renowned rock star overnight.
Right. And, the tool doesn't just do it for you. And that's and it's fun. You mentioned strategic partnerships, just because when I'm walking in and talking, when we're talking, it's always like the AI thing just gets like, it's funny how different people are, that talking, using that in the conversation. The reality is I call him chef. I call them both chef. Because the stuff that they're making is incredible. Yeah. And it's they're like, I mean, you let them talk about it, but it's like you can't. Not everybody can play the guitar. Everybody can play the guitar, but not everybody. You can pay for lessons, learn how for months.
Everybody's Jimi Hendrix, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Exactly. So let's actually dive into that. I mean, 5 years ago, producing cinematic content, like I remember when Monster Inc. came out, and it was all of a sudden like the hair that moved on his body was so beyond fascinating. And I'm sure it took hours upon hours upon hours and months for just even a strand to move. But nowadays it's merely down to, hours or, whatever you guys develop from the back end. But it's changing rapidly. What's happened behind the scenes that most people don't realize?
So I think from the technical perspective, at least, the models are getting smarter and they're improving exponentially. You read about this, and to Matt's point, a lot of it is marketing, but a lot of it is true. So recently you had the announcements from Claude about Mythos Preview, which is the AI to end everything, right? It's too smart to let out of the box. We can't let people use it normally. Not really the case, at least from what we're seeing. But the models are improving exponentially, and they're now improving themselves. So this doesn't just apply to the programming aspect of things like Codex or Claude Code, but it also applies to the media. So you see, 3 years ago when ChatGPT surfaced, and you see the early video models and even the early image models, Will Smith eating spaghetti being the one that really made the rounds. And you look at it now through Seed Dance 2, which is the one that came out, about 2 months ago. From ByteDance, and it's just improved exponentially. So I think, at least from a tech perspective, the fact that they're now able to train themselves is going to make them improve exponentially. And again, it's all improving on itself. So as the videos get better, it trains from the better video data and can produce better videos. So we're seeing it with Google Omni as well, the model they just dropped last week. So we're expecting this to continue improving and at an exponential rate. To Matt's point, it's still going to require someone to conduct it and, tell it what you want to make. Just saying make successful movie is not really going to work. But the fact that it understands physics, it understands different types of animation, we're seeing those improvements in real time. It's only going to get better from here.
Why don't you talk about the movie?
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's interesting because, there are two things. First, when Pixar was making Toy Story, like tech at that time, it would take them like a day to make like 30 seconds of the movie. And it took to make the whole movie, it took a year. I forget the exact amount of time, but the fact that now we can create, Pixar level animation and with just, a couple of prompts and an image is amazing. And like Sean was saying, the tech is moving so fast. And, at the Cannes Film Festival also, they just had this feature film that was produced by Higgsfield. And that was 95 minutes long, but it took two weeks to make, 15 people, and the quality is amazing. It's like it looks like a real movie, but even to get that, it still takes a lot of technical power. So they made like 66,000 generations of video to get 25 minutes, and to get those 25 minutes, they only used 200 out of that 60,000. So there's a ratio of 64 to 1. So like Matt, Sean is saying, even though the tech has improved so much, it still takes the human curation to, put it together.
Like Sacha, people, at least me, I consume and I look at stuff. So when we started working together, they would send me content, and I'd say, hey, could you go and I think you should come in a beat later, or could we change that hat to this or that? Because you think about things in a linear way, right? Like once you have the footage, you can just go in and edit it. That's not even the most advanced, and they could talk to how exactly it works. But when Jay's talking about that feature film, you're really there's nothing linear about the production. You're putting together different commands. Each one of those commands have structure, and they have to stay within certain boundaries. They can't be a certain length. They've got to include certain languages. You have to prioritize. Like you put in a prompt, I want to see a movie of an interview between a female interviewer and 3 guys. I want them to be like this. You'll notice things after the first one that you do, like, something will be unstable. But I like the way that Matthew looks. I don't like the way that Sean looks. And that thing in the back changes a few times. You can't just go in and say, I like everything here. Keep that. 60,000 clips. And by the way, they can't just do what's the length?
Yeah, it's only 15 seconds.
Right. So you can't just
So each
do,
frame you mean is like 15 seconds.
you are going back and you're seeing in a anywhere up to 4,000 characters of multiple different languages, Chinese, English, numeric, symbolic. You have to figure out which ones combinations, and then it's just a choice. Where's diminishing returns? Because these guys, I don't have their okay, like at all. And the first thing we did when we got together, and I'm sorry, he made this amazing, composite reel of like different categories and it was beautiful. But I was like, we should move in this. And he's like, okay. And he kept going. But finally, he's like, it's the first promo reel. Like, we'll get it on the next. Then finally, he showed me just a little bit about, we call it the cook, being in the cook. And I was like, whoa, I'm sorry. Because I was looking at it completely wrong. I mean, 60,000 clips were generated. They used how many?
Like 250.
250. Because each one, you ultimately right now, they correct me, but with where the technology is, at least with what we're doing, it's, you get guidance on what you're looking for. And you can be this close, but then somebody will spot like, no, you see that thing over there? And you have to figure out, because you have all these different moving pieces. It's really, and I'm fitting a lot into this response. I'm really excited about it, but it's like another misconception is that people talk about it and they're like, it removes the art. This is one of the crazier art forms. Like this guy is really lassoing like hurricanes, because you're really having to go back and choose, and you can't, it's very, and so once we get something locked, like if we're working with a jewelry business or something, once we get a workflow locked, that's the IP, because we have workflow, we know how to hit that where these things are all stable every time. And now we can replicate that, but somebody else can't.
Yeah.
Because it's a totally unique composition of all those different elements that have to stay together and stay stable over. You change the time, you change the light, like you can't just go back and edit one thing. It's an incredible, art form.
It's almost making editing so much easier, in the sense of, if you're editing a certain clip, you don't have to go back and refilm that. You can just basically tell the AI and prompt it almost like it's refilming it for you, in essence, right? I mean, to look at it that way, because if you've shot something, you're having to work with what you've shot, right? In this case, you're actually at an advantage because you can shoot multiple times, but it's not going out and doing the production of it all, right?
That's true. I mean, I'd say it's a pro and a con,
right?
Because like for the AI, because like you're right, you can reshoot by regenerating the clip, but then it's almost like you have to start from scratch again, because you have to wait for it and see if it comes out right. And like, what Matt was just saying, trying to figure out how to control it, that's like the key. And every production company now will have their own workflow, and that creates like the types of videos that they make. So like how, even going back to Pixar, they have their own style of animation, right? We have our own formulas for how we make a jewelry video or real estate, and those become like the IP.
Right. Because you don't just have, so one thing, like, just because one thing works once, right? Like if that light over there, and we have to go back and everything looked great, but let's say we like in between something in your background glitched, right? That totally, you can't use it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that everything else stays static and just go back and fix that one thing. You have to figure out the way of shaping the prompt where you are able to keep everything, because you always have just this box. Then you got to figure out, okay, what if we do in 15-second intervals? What if we do that, like, if we break that up into 4 different 3-second things and then a fourth on the, like, you're nothing is static, but once you lock it in, then it's replicatable. But 60,000 clips were generated and 200 of them were used to make a movie.
Yeah.
And that's because figuring out how to, and then you're choosing, like, we're just not going to be able to do it where we have everything stable for 15 seconds. So what don't we care about?
Yeah, so it's almost like you're taking a set number, like when you've hit a high note of that 15 seconds, it almost becomes like a piece of code that you guys can utilize and say, hey, replicate what we did for this brand and utilize it in this instance. So it's almost like you're going to be building a repository and a library of all of these different set sort of locked in like codes. I'm calling them codes right now. I don't know if you guys have a different terminology that you can start
Workflows.
to plug and play as you move through your productions.
Yeah, that's right. And it applies across industry and across styles of video too. So we made a promo for the Knicks recently that used Dragon Ball Z style animations. Now that becomes a workflow we can replicate for other sports or even other brands that we want to put in a similar workflow. So it does become scalable in this way. This is exactly how we're envisioning it. Yeah. And the idea is to be able to create a number of these so that we can go into different companies, showcase them, and then if they want to add their own personal flair, narration, storytelling, we can also customize it in that way. But the idea is to have something out of the box that we can replicate easily and at scale for companies across industry.
Right, because what we're trying to help companies do, right? Today, companies have to show up for customers to be discovered across a growing number of surface areas, right? You've got social media, you've got Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, podcasts, websites. So content production, right? You look at all these amazing brands, and it's June 8th. Okay, but the last time you posted was March 6th, or this, because they're in the business of their business, and content generation, to your point, like for long form video, can be very expensive. We give them the way to lean into creative, right? And then what we can replicate. Once we know they like to show their product in a certain way or a certain thing, and we have that workflow down, we can just change out the images and we can just, and now they can just be deploying that across everywhere at a very steady cadence that around their priorities, right?
It's almost like you're creating a content creation DNA per brand that you work with.
That's what?
Yeah, we're stealing that.
Put that up on the site.
Content creators mixed with a marketer.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many questions that are, coming about, but one of the things that I wanted to ask was, with AI and the way it is set today, what's happening right now is that it's utilizing what's already out there, meaning it's aggregating information, aggregating workflows, aggregating systems that were in place, because that's why we as humans have to be involved, because it cannot create something completely new, like come up with a new concept, come up with a new idea. But that's where you guys come in from the human aspect standpoint, that we're able to navigate and ask it certain prompts that we can create something new. And I think it was Matthew that mentioned, somebody felt that this was stealing art, right? Or we were taking away from the creativity. But in essence, this is where the fear mongering comes in of, stay away from AI. It's going to take over your job and it's going to ruin everyone's life. But in the essence of we should be speaking about in the drive of this is that it's going to take decades for AI just to stand on its own 2 feet and be able to have the human instinct of coming up with something completely new, as entrepreneurs do, or, a new artist has created a new form of painting or a new design and so on and so forth. And that's why the marriage between the human and the AI system is, or like Matthew had mentioned, there is a fourth person involved. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I don't think we dive into that detail enough with the whole landscape of AI, and everybody just talks about this tool that's going to be sucking us dry versus this tool that is a partnership in everything that we do across the board.
Yeah, you've seen this. So I work in the education space as well. My previous company is an education startup. And this is the same thing we've been hearing, all of us, since we were kids, about, the calculator is going to replace the teacher, right? And then computers are going to replace the teacher. And then the internet's going to replace the teacher. When in actuality, it's the teacher that uses these tools that replaces those who don't. And this is another instance of that applied at a massive scale. But, to your point, Sacha, the AI is backwards thinking. It's trained on something. It's trained on what we've been producing as humans for the, last hundreds of years. So it cannot, by definition, think of something new, although there are cases where it's using that previous data to, extrapolate a hypothesis or think of something that could possibly be new. But you see this in the programming world a lot, where the AI slop, right? A landing page that's clearly created by AI. Everything looks the exact same. Rounded corners, gradients everywhere. It's literally the same. Yeah, it's literally the same. The vibe coding, it's literally the same thing every time. However, the vibe coding is a misnomer in the sense that while there are people using tools like Lovable just to create and spit out random landing pages, there are also people who are using Claude Code to run agents that help them produce their code, high-level code, 10x faster. So there are definitely multiple, there's a spectrum here where people at one end kind of just presume it's going to eat everything and take all of our jobs, and the other end where we're sitting, where we're using it to benefit companies, to allow people to save money on productions that would have otherwise cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, to Matt's point, create this content with an irregular cadence that they can use without breaking the bank.
I think, just in terms of like where the conversation goes, when in talking with companies, you get kind of a spectrum of reactions. So my background is out of private equity, and we're industry agnostic, working with a lot of different types of businesses. And I've gone into those businesses now with YBA. And, I always say I'm only going to mention AI once in the beginning, just as kind of like the, what brought this together, kind of as the spark. But the reality is, one reaction is typically, well, we can do this internally, right? Yes, you can go and anybody can download the software. I'll tell you where to get it. Okay. We've gone through that, in terms of, but like the other side of it is, it really isn't, without the person, without the guidance, to your point, because it can't create on its own. Durable memory in the most advanced mythos, everything, durable memory. And there's going to be expectation shock, right? Like the narrative is always told through the lens of the technology. The way that, to Sean's point, the calculator, the steam engine, everything, it's, the reality is it's not just an arrival of the latest model update that changed and just wipes out. It's an iterative process, right? And it's the absorption by the human systems of the technology that really moves us along. And in this case, YBA is, where we can navigate these tools incredible. Like when I saw what these guys were doing, she's like, whoa, you know what I mean? And like, but incredibly, but it's that ability, because what I say to the prospects, and like we're talking to people in fashion, in customer products, and machinery, and so it's so much fun because we're getting such a wide spectrum of reaction. But the idea is, with your guidance, like the way that we pitch, right? Because we're pitching on time, time and per unit economics, right? Because we meet, and we have like a huddle. We look at a prospect's website, we look at their Instagram. We say, where can we look? Okay, and then Jay will go to work, and he'll just very calmly be like, what do you think? And it'll be, but I'll show up and I'll say to these guys that are making tubing or earrings or something, and they're like, whoa. And then I say, okay, that's without us having spoken to you, right? That's just us. We don't know your business beyond us trying to get to be a vendor to your business, right? Now give us support, give us the context, give us the good visuals that you want to see, give us your priorities. And because of these guys, like that is what, it's an amazing tool when you have people that know how to navigate it, but also being able to understand and communicate with the business, because ultimately it's that direction. You cannot remove the human element.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think there's a concept of, where does AI outperform humans? Where does humans outperform AI? And again, this is what we were talking about, going back to the marriage of the AI platform in conjunction with working with the human heart, for example, right? Because right now the conversation is too much separation between the two and not coming together. Like I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this, well-known ex-Google executive was talking about how his next book is going to be co-written by AI, right? And he was going to put that on the front cover of the book. And I think that he was like, look, he's like, I'm a writer.
Basically, like, yeah, it'll take 5 minutes, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
He can do that.
I know.
He's just
But at the end of
disclaiming
the
his
day,
name.
yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like AI can almost write better than maybe some authors today, right? But they can't come up with the subject matter. They can't come up with the creative flow. They can't come up with the creative concepting and the ideas and so on and so forth. So I like that he put that out there, because it's a marriage. He's saying, I have the idea, but AI is helping me execute it for you to read it and for it to flow so much better. So then I can take out the numerous amount of editors that would normally look at this, and maybe just have one editor look at it versus 30 until I get to production. So time to get to market for me writing a book is cut not only in half, but maybe by X amount of days versus
Right.
X amount of years, right?
Right.
So I think that we need to get louder about the marriage between the two components versus the separation and the continuous fear mongering across the board, which is really the reality of where we are today.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. In the tech world, there's so much doomerism going around, and we combat this every day. I mean, even as Matt was saying, talking to prospects, talking to anybody who's in the space. It happened the other day. We were talking to some guy who wanted to make an animation 20 minutes long, and I went back and forth with him, and we told him the price, and he was like, "Ha, I'll make this for $100 using an AI tool." And the answer is, Godspeed, good luck. You're going to go in there and say, make 20-minute animation, and it's going to come out looking terrible. So there's definitely a lot that needs to be improved. And unfortunately, the AI companies are pushing this narrative because they want to showcase that they have the best model. Yeah. If your model is the Terminator model, you win. So, all of this hullabaloo, for lack of a better word, about this is it's frustrating because it definitely it impacts not only YBA, but I think the world as a whole negatively. The whole idea is to showcase to people how they can use these tools to improve themselves, improve their jobs, and improve their lives, as opposed to making them feel like they're going to get replaced tomorrow by a system that simply cannot function without human involvement.
Yeah.
I'll just say one thing, but it's a gap, right? You have a fluency gap in general. And when something is so prevalent in society, you can't admit any ignorance about anything, right? And the companies right now, they're raising trillions of dollars. So for them, to Sean's point, they're out there saying like, "Oh my God, we can't. It's so powerful. We cannot show you Claude 10.8 because the world will just end.
Give me $10 billion.
I mean, right?
That's fear mongering right there.
Right now, just like with like the blitz scaling companies and the .com businesses, the first iteration of that narrative, the real business model is corporate finance. Do a capital raise, get a mark to value, and in you can do that when the general public doesn't understand the technology as well, right? And really, that's what we're confronting. And for me, it's fun. It's so fascinating because you either get the whole oh, I can do that for $100, go. You're not gonna be able to, or this immediate thing right now. Oh, it's AI though. We can't look AI. Right. CGI, right, in film was hated, right? When that first came out, people were like CGI, until it was awesome, right? And people saw it used in a way. What I say to prospects is, let us show you. Show me your priorities. Obviously, we're not, because when where the limit, 60,000 clips to 200 to make a movie, right? Chef over here, he understands. We look through it, and he's very patient. So what I'm saying, can you go back and do this and change this guy? He's like, yeah, let me do another one. Let me do it. I was like, man, I'm sorry, But the point is, it's that fluency thing that benefits us in a way because people have this thing like, oh my God, you know how to use this really good. I could pay. But then they're like, but this should cost 20 cents. I saw on Twitter, you can just go and press a button. And so it's a funny thing the way that it's the same thing just on a macro. You see a headline, company X lays off 100,000 people because of Twitter, because of AI. Show me where you delegated, and then the next day, and the stock goes way down. But then the next day it says, AI is going to make this company so efficient, and then the stock goes way up. You have these wild swings because people don't really understand or can't point to, and it's by intention because as the further the narrative runs away, the better the valuation gets. So it's a funny thing. We're confronting it every day. But Jay posted on YBA the other day. Martin Scorsese was doing. He did this really cool reel where he was showing that he's using AI to do his drafting, right? He's saying he's not making the ultimate film. Now that's where it's going, by the way. But the people that we're talking to, we've gotten into some really high level places of artistic. That's where we want to be playing ultimately. But they're using it because the economics, turnaround time, technology will keep getting better. And it's going that way. And I think you just have to, it's that iterative, choppy process of introducing to people that are kind of firm on an idea because one, they don't want to admit not knowing anything, or they have one shallow use case, or they haven't seen it look really good yet for their application. So it's there's not one you can't really paint with a big brush across anything. We're seeing a whole range. And that's what makes it so exciting. It is a new technology. It means something different to everybody. And, for us, it's fun because we get to just figure out how to try to help people.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And just hearing about this guy that was like, I could do it for $100. I don't need to, have you guys work through it. What I think what's happening right now is the platform is so loud, it's so noisy. Like you said, you have these iterations that are wanting to support the economics of things where it's like, we're laying off, the stock goes down, we're re-injecting, the stock goes up, and it's all by design. But at the end of the day, I think that companies like, yours can really mitigate this noise by truly coming out and educating the platform. Because if you didn't tell me about all of these different iterations that happen on the back end, a lot of people do think it's just the click of a button. That's how we're taught, because we are also, don't forget, in the economics of the United States, there is this concept of fast more, fast more, fast more, versus no, things are going to take time. So we have always been on this hamster wheel of speed and agility and getting to market as fast as possible. And so therefore this concept of like pressing a button, the reasons why we have all these fast food locations and things like that versus, more mom and pops restaurants, is because there is a need to want things to be done fast, not understanding the back end of, and how things take time and the different frames, as you're explaining, Matthew, and I think that concept goes back to, okay, AI is basically cutting time in half, but there's still a need for people to be developing this. I myself am not going to be able to develop the type of quality that you guys are putting out there. And it's not necessarily okay, cinematic is out the window. It's just really, AI is really making things a lot faster and more agile to market. But there is still this need to ensure that we are editing so much on the back end, because it's not just a click of a button and all of a sudden you have an amazing video. It's not. And people don't understand that. And someone like him, obviously he's got his own ego and he's going to stand in his own way. Therefore, his business probably won't grow to where it needs to be. But at the end of the day, it's the lack of education, because there is so much noise around this whole platform that people aren't listening.
Right. And yeah, definitely. And also what you said about the time is the main thing. We call it workflow compression, where, now you can create 50 social media clips in like a fraction of the time that it used to take you. But the balance is that the low cost of these platforms, which the platforms themselves are promoting. That's why everyone associates AI with cheap, because now you don't spend a lot, but you're not really paying for the platform. You're paying for, in our case, they're paying for expertise and ease of use in addition to saving the time. So it's like, to convey that to them, it still takes people time to grasp that for now. It's still early in the adoption, and so that's some stuff that we have to deal with.
Yeah, we just try to show, not tell. I always, that's why, we show up to meetings and we've done the work, and I'm just like, all right, we're halfway finished. To be honest, we're finished, and people aren't used to really
have to pay for that work.
Normally
in the past.
No, I normally, for what we show up with, they've gone through like a briefing thing. They've waited a week. They've gone through this, and I'm like, look, the whole it's just and that's the other thing. To your point, when you have fast and you're seeing something as fast, people think cheap.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, this is just a different production model. And I say to them in the beginning, I'm like, look, it's about our ability to be responsive. This is fed by your context, your guidance, your priorities, and this is what we can do when we're just thinking about things. Imagine I always say, let me just get in the ballpark, and then one conversation will hit bullseye.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift,
Yeah, and we're seeing different reaction across. It's fun. Like with any startup, you can't force systemization upon anything. We're figuring out, and these guys when we got involved, they're like their family. So I was excited, but what I saw visually was like, whoa. And then I was asking questions, and they had been doing everything, like those workflows that we're talking about. They've been categorizing them, cataloging them, keeping them, because that's the IP ultimately. That's our ability to replicate. And everything that we've been doing, they've just been doing in such a thoughtful way. And, on the website, yba.world, we include, insights, industry insights on all this stuff, because the education for that mind shift, for that, I'm, for my thing, talking to friends, especially me, because this is not my, so when I call somebody up, I'm like, and you heard my passion when I talk about it. It's from, because I get so excited. They're like, what? I'm like, I'm coming in. And, so like when I do that, it's like, I'm coming in and having that ability. So we came up with that idea to have, insights on the platform to talk about all this stuff so that people can start to get education also. Because the other thing, Sacha, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking, but the other thing is like, and now, especially because we're talking about it, it's going to start showing up on your Instagram. There is a lot of, while this runway, this gap between fluency and capability exists, there is this runway, and I call it like cheap and deep, the field of like just the people that have prompts, right? And they're out there and they're like, we can do it for, that's not what we're doing, right? These guys started early. I joined and, kind of really taking a concerted effort to position this as a real creative, production partner for companies and for, ultimately for, original concepts also, but like, and it's just a differentiator, real thoughtful approach to the whole process.
What I love about it, just, on the stance of being a marketer, is that, video is king. Video has been king for a while, but not a lot of people had the affordability of being able to utilize video for their platforms, to have the production, to spend, to get all these different types of creatives out on social, or to film if they're like an OEM manufacturing company. How do we make things look better rather than just looking at like a steel turbine machine going around, but like really get into like the nitty gritty as to, what excites an engineer or, somebody who's going to be purchasing, so on and so forth. Now, taking that creative component, and for a lack of a better term, making things look sexier in a non-sexy sort of industry, I think is so interesting right now, because you would always think, a jewelry company, fashion, like all of this makes sense to do video. But if we think of like a really boring industrial manufacturing company that is, making millions, they can now have the platform to really tell their story through video that they normally wouldn't have, and make things more interesting for people, right? I mean, let's just, it's not an analogy that's connected to this, but people weren't really interested in F1 until F1 came out with like storytelling through movies, right? And then all of a sudden you had a ton of different people that were interested in F1 because we told the story, right? Maybe all of a sudden I become really interested one day in like a wind turbine because I understand the science behind it and what it's doing for me as an individual versus only connecting business to business. But now I'm really getting like a consumer involved in the conversation because I all of a sudden landed on a storytelling about X company that's doing amazing things out of Norway, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
Explainer videos, Sacha, right? Yeah. Like for these manufacturing businesses, these production, that, produce everything from saw blades to, to wealth management firms that are trying to explain their products.
Yeah.
You have a trade show coming up this weekend. Tell us what you want to do. I mean, we can turn it around at a quality, with guidance, with your context, what these guys can do. That's such a powerful tool, right? I mean, and, I have this conversation again. I'm from private equity, so I was talking to a super smart guy, and he was like, "I get it." He's like, "I get your whole pitch, but these aren't necessarily." We were talking about some machinery type businesses. He's like, "What's the ROI for us?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, neither do we, because we've never advertised really this way. Like we don't necessarily. How do you like? Maybe they don't care about having a lot of people on TikTok." I said, "That's okay." I said, "But the explainer videos, a lot of those types of businesses have nothing. You go on their website and they've just got Bibles of copy.
And you don't even know what they do."
Well, yeah, and the argument back could be, but the tech guy that's in the field, he does. Okay, but you're going to tell me that it's going to be a negative to be able to differentiate between those SKUs in a way that tells the brand, and I think, Apple still spends crazy money to advertise. Everybody knows who Apple is. So I don't buy into like, okay, but there's this section of the world that doesn't shouldn't market itself, right? You have businesses, and being able to differentiate yourself and offering is always a positive. And our, pitch is, okay, take a shot with us because we can help you lean into things that you otherwise wouldn't. A lot of companies, by the way, don't do the explainer videos because of the cost and time to do them. Like, I know that, I know that they like the idea because we go on the websites and they have a few from June 2018, from March 2024, and they're not doing them because they got to run their business. And, I'll just say one more thing. Like, we got one thing back when we were pitching this one group. We got this one thing back, and this guy's like, look at what this company's doing with this AI, right? And I looked at it, and I called them up. I'm like, what do you guys think? And we looked at the time, and Sean and Jay audited. Like, I don't think this is AI, in the sense that we're using AI. Yeah. I went and I looked it through. I found the LinkedIn post by the division head from that defense business that was posting from the studio in Scotland, where they filmed this piece, this promo video on their landing page. And I found the cost. It cost $110,000 to create. The ironic thing is, it wasn't AI, right? They didn't, like, none of the models that we're using were out there. The ironic thing is, we can match that quality, right? For the $110,000 that they paid for that, we can match that quality at, a denominator of that, right? Yeah, so, that's the ironic thing and so they want it. I think that there's been friction associated with the production of it, right, that keeps them not leaning into it. And, I can't tell you, like, I've never been able to figure out why is it worth to spend $800 million to get your name on the side of a stadium. I'd love to see the ROI models on that.
Yeah. There is none directly associated.
Exactly. Well, I don't know that there's one where I could pound my table and say, what are you talking about? You do this, like, duh, right? Mm-hmm. But intuitively, let's get our name on the kit for Liverpool, and a lot of people are going to see it.
Yeah. And
so look, I mean, the point is, I just think that people get, like, the conventional approach that's formed in this case, I think, a lot by the frictions that are associated with the production of this stuff, forms like a hardening against it in a way. And we're showing up. We're like, look, you can go ahead and do this. Like, you want to talk ROI? You're not risking hundreds of thousands of dollars on what we can give you. It's a good way to, and plus we're showing up with the work halfway done. So it's like we're talking about, so we're getting a really exciting response, is what I'm saying.
I mean, with any kind of evolvement and change, there's pain to get people to get to a point of having that mindset shift, right? Mm-hmm. So right now we are in the time of that reality where, somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to spend, $800 million, or I'm going to put my ad, on, well, an ad is a completely different case, like during football season. But yeah, it is a mindset shift to say, how do we move away from, just having our logo splashed up on the screen versus actually telling a story? I mean, not to get into politics, but if we want to think about one of the most viral videos that are most of the viral videos that are being pushed out right now are all animated through AI, or just things that have been done in seconds to just get right out there, versus somebody coming on screen and talking about it, because it's having an impact. It's explaining something in a different way versus the way, reading an article or something like that. It's spoofing what's happening between two countries and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, it's really, whether it's positive or negative, it's having its own moment, if you will.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if AI can create almost anything visually, does storytelling become even more important, which is what we're talking about?
Yes, I think it does. That's what, going back to the start of the conversation, I think now the bar to be a good storyteller has been set much higher, since anyone can create anything. So anyone can be a filmmaker now, but what are they trying to say, or what are they telling it takes a lot more skill, especially also to break through all the noise, because now there's so much more content coming. So, but the same principles apply that were there before. If the story has a good message or a meaning, those kind of stories resonate with people more, as opposed to just with the random cool visuals.
Yeah. Do you
Sacha, I just say to Jason's point, I was with somebody the other day who works in the creative industry, And she said she was with these kids and they were talking about, and they love them. She's like, okay, go. She's like, you're Spielberg and you're Scorsese now. You have, because the other aspect is, to Jay's point, the tools are there, right? Like the guitar's there. Go learn how to play that guitar.
Right.
That's an amazing thing about today, because people do, and that's only going to get, as the models get better, as people get educated, creatives get more, ambitious about, wow, like there's really much less standing between me and creating something,
Yeah. Do you believe in the conversations that you guys are having, that people, and I know you've said they know they need it, but do you think that they are shifting in terms of understanding, how they need to be utilizing video and within their business? And, where are you seeing more yeses versus other industries that are like, I don't know if this is right for me, come back to me, in a couple of months? Where are you getting more yeses versus, I'm not so sure yet, industry wise?
One thing that we've been noticing is that because it seems like anyone can do it themselves, a lot of the founder-led startups, which are in kind of maybe earlier stages, the founders tend to want to do everything themselves. So they just think, if as opposed to paying someone else to do it, they're like, I'm just going to learn this and do it. And I think in those cases, it's a combination of like, it almost seems too easy, I think, to some people, that like how it works. And they also may not have like the budgets to spend right now. But so I think that thing with like today's founders want to do everything themselves, as opposed to delegating some things and saving time.
Yeah.
That we've noticed is a thing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like with because we've been talking to a lot of fashion businesses and creatives, and rightfully so, they have a they're I'd say very sensitive to their price points and and how they're being presented, as any kind of, you got to be right, and protect your brand. And they have I'd say with some of those, you have a reflexive response to AI. And I've spoken to people high up at LVMH and like doing real creative stuff, and they're using it. And they're using it for drafting purposes, like the Scorsese example. They're using it for across these campaigns, because you cannot. It's just too compelling. The time, the workflow compression, what it does to remove the cost, the time drag, and everything. But I think there aren't. It's also a funny thing, because generationally, my age and up, we don't nothing. And the younger you go, the kind of more native.
True.
Well,
the information just wasn't delivered as fast, Matthew.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's interesting, right? Like,
Yes.
like again, my kind of like, people want to know about this, right? They don't, once you get to a certain age, you don't want to admit that you don't know something about it. Like, nobody wants to sit and take a lesson anymore, right? So you want real time.
Yeah.
And I think, I think the next stage of this, because right now I'd say we're showing up, and a lot of them are impressed by all of them. I'd say are happy, or like curious to impressed to excited with what we're showing, right? But they still are like, we're still in this phase, in my experience, where they haven't really categorized where it's okay yet, right? On a whole,
That's a good point.
That's the next phase.
Yeah.
And I think what we keep talking about is, I want to be locked. Like, we are getting ourselves locked in, because for that phase, like, we're going to be there and be able to do all that.
Yeah.
And by the way, where they say where people get to, that'll grow, right? Like, okay, we can use it here, right? And it's gonna, it just depends, because it's not like, look, you could find another 3 guys doing the same thing and talk to them about doing your product. It's not going to be the same just because they're using the same tools. It's what we're doing is not a commodity, especially at this phase. It's the opposite of a commodity.
Yeah.
Because we really are figuring out, and in a lot of cases, we have a very defensive audience. They care about their brand. we figured that out. The first round of things, we were sending out like videos that had their branding on the stuff we were showing. And somebody that's in it said, Matthew, you're doesn't care. I don't care how great it is. You're putting them in a position where the first thing they're saying is, wait a second, we wouldn't do that in blue. Instead, we put it without their brand, and we put them in the position of, oh wow, can you put our stuff in blue? Yeah. Because so we're learning all the time, but you have to deal with the AI thing is center, and we just are figuring out the best way to navigate and adapt, because ultimately we're just trying to form commercial relationships. We're not trying to harden anybody's understanding of what we're doing. We're trying to mold it to work best for them.
I love it. And this isn't the case of, you know, how back in the days when somebody came up with an amazing concept and, you know, they didn't flourish, and then 5 years later somebody came up with it and it flourished. It was like they were too soon to the market. This isn't a case for stuff like this. It's like you guys are going to continue evolving. You're creating noise now, and you're going to continue to grow with the tool and push forward. And it's not that the case of, this is most likely the case that you did come into the market sooner than everyone else did, so that you're a lot more tuned in and you're in the process of evolving with the technology versus somebody jumping in 5 years from now when the technology is so much more advanced that they're having to backtrack to learn everything in lieu up to that point. One question I wanted to ask you guys, and then I want to ask each one of you guys separate questions. What excites you most and what worries you most?
Well, for me, what excites me most is actually what you were saying before, like the ability to make anything. You know, my background is, I'm a hip hop artist and a filmmaker. So, you know, the struggle was always like using whatever resources you have to create the highest quality, and especially for like music videos and films, and I have a web series. Budget is always a factor. So this whole industry of like the AI video opens that up, because now there are no limits. Even Matt was just saying. So like, but then what scares me is actually replacing the traditional filmmaking, because I actually enjoy acting and shooting. So, but I don't think that's going to happen, right now, or at least very soon, because like the human emotion. But yeah, those two things together.
I love it.
Yeah, I'd say for me, what excites me the most is similar to Jay, but more on the technical side. Programming as an industry has fundamentally changed, as you touched on, Sacha, and I think it was overdue. We've had programmers making exorbitant salaries, doing things and commanding things in the way that they should never have actually had the power to do. And now that's been fully democratized. And I think it's amazing just in terms of not only what it opens up for software creation, but how you can mix these two worlds of software and video. I mean, now it's all overlapping and interweaving. And again, it's democratizing it for everybody, which I think was well overdue. There is a part of me that does fear some of the doomerism pieces of this, that the AIs will get so sophisticated that they will overshadow us and, lead to a world where humans are not needed in the same capacity, or work is not needed in the same capacity, and thus society will have to change. Now, I don't know when that will be or if that will ever happen, but it certainly is something I think about, and less about if the technology will ever get there and more about how society will react, because historically, the laws and society as a whole never progresses at the same rate as the technology. It's always lagging behind. And at this point, it's significantly lagging behind. So, we're seeing things about, and again, not to get political, but we're seeing things about, the government wanting to take stakes in some of the AI companies, right, that came out a couple of days ago. So we're seeing reactionary things happening around us because the tech is accelerating so rapidly. So where that converges and where that leads, no one knows, but it's certainly something top of mind, at least from the technical side of things.
Yeah. And I was just, so, Sean touches on it, and, we have insight on the included on the website, but that gap between fluency and adoption rate, just kind of, I was looking at this spectrum from like my private equity type lens. You see OpenAI, you see Anthropic forming these partnerships with these consultant businesses to bring them into the institutions that aren't adopting them at the rate that's tracking with the narrative on and where capabilities go. And it's actually not like the doomerism is saying that it's going to replace. Right now, it's adding workers because they're finding new things, because people that know how to use this stuff as an assistive tool, right, at the enterprise value, they're finding different areas that it can be helpful, and they need people to come and man those posts that they're identifying. So, history shows us that before kind of workforces are removed, they're just reallocated around the new technology, and it's an iterative process. I'm most excited. Like, what excites me is that I like being part of, like, going in and trying to figure out, because ultimately, like, this is such a helpful service. What we're providing is fun, and it's a helpful service to companies to communicate. And what these guys are creating, we keep looking for creative stuff because I want to get into places that are most defensive. Like, I like going in, I get to call them up. I'm like, I'm ready for this. I like going in for the fight.
I agree.
No, I love being told, like, we can't have our stuff look bad. Like, I like calling these guys up and being like, yeah, like, let's get them. And and because, like, the truth is, there are limits on the model for what certain people, and there's gonna be, right? But what's amazing is finding that sweet spot where we can be like, no, look, we can help you here, and we can produce really cool stuff. And the art form of it is really exciting me. Like, I think people are missing that part of it, just moving away from the whole, like, society tech thing. When I learned how the production thing, the art form is so cool, and that, I think, is going to really grow once people start to understand what goes into that. It's mad scientist stuff, because it's so, and you can you just get lost in it because you're trying to figure out all these different combinations of things.
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, I've got individual questions for you guys. Sean, as the CTO, you're building systems that scale creatively. How do you balance efficiency without losing the human element?
It's a great question. So as we're growing and kind of expanding what we're trying to do here, this is something we are constantly dealing with. So, Jay, our head chef, is the kind of the creative expert here. So he's taught both Matthew and I how the systems work, and I'm trying to integrate those types of that type of process into the workflows. So just to give you a concrete example, Sacha, like we've been talking about creating different workflows for different industries. So we're working on a workflow now for the jewelry industry where we have, maybe 50 different types of 15-second videos you can produce, but they're all designed by us. So, Jay will look at this, we'll then iterate through the types of things we can build, and then try to programmatically execute those so that we can scale it up. So I don't see a point where that is not the case. I think we will forever have a human in the loop as we scale things up. It just depends on, how we scale the operations technically. So what we're going to be looking to do as we scale is, instead of finding, obviously creative people are necessary here in our business, but with the taste and the way that Jay is looking at things, we can kind of disseminate that knowledge to the rest of the team and have people execute on the vision using the technical tools to scale, as opposed to having, 50 creatives trying to think about 50 ideas to produce different things. So that's at least how we're envisioning the automation and scaling up as we go. But there will always and forever be a human in the loop. There's never going to come a point where we're just churning out random things that the machine comes up with without, one of us taking a look at it and really using a keen eye to judge it.
Agree. Jay, you've directed projects viewed by millions worldwide. What's the biggest lesson storytelling has taught you about human behavior?
I like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that a good story never goes out of style, and that, like, storytelling is always the most important part of whatever you're making. You can make something that looks like it was shot in your home studio, but if the story is relatable or draws an emotion from someone, people will still watch it. And so that's something to keep in mind, even with all these tools. And as production value goes up, the story is always the crux of whatever you're creating.
Agreed.
Did you watch Making It in Mumbai?
Huh?
You're Making It in Mumbai?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I was still trying to remember what show it reminded me of, but I mean, your humor is quite dry, which I love. So
thank you.
It's amazing. So it's fantastic.
I love
it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Matthew, you work on partnerships and growth. What industries do you think are going to benefit the most from this shift?
We've hit everything from, like, steel piping to fine jewelry to makeup to, the reality is it all comes from the prospect's guidance and priorities. That's the fun. Like, first of all, so I've spent my career working across a lot of different industries, right? I was always a generalist in the investment world. And, I always enjoy learning about different businesses. The fun thing here is I get to go in and from a different lens, learn a lot about different businesses. And I think there's different use cases. But the great thing about the technology and the production model being so responsive is that, like, I'll come back and I'll be like, wow, like they want to do this. like, and these guys, I call them up. I'm like, they wanted to see if we could build them an app that does X, Y, Z. Yeah, we can do that. And then they start talking. I have no idea what the hell they're saying to each other. And I'm just watching. I'm like, wait, so we can do it? And they're like, yeah, we can do it. No problem. And then he's like, I can actually do this in a few hours. I'm like, no, let me send this to them and we'll talk about this. So the cool thing is like when you get a little bit of buy-in, right? Like, these manufacturing type businesses that I pushed, one operating president came back with like, I'd love to see X, Y. Like his thing is, because a lot of the time in different products, you think about how do I show this, and they might have this really cool story, but they can't show it unless they want to go and spend in their mind, and rightfully so. Like traditionally, the content production would be huge amounts of money and time, but like if they're willing to just take a shot and see what we can do, it's fun because the art form is figuring out on these tough challenges. Like, wow, how do we nail this? And they do. That's the cool thing. Like,
I love it. I love it.
I don't have their calm. Like, you'll let me do a lot of talking, and then like I'll be done after 48 minutes. You're like, by the way, like I did something. You want to look at it? So.
Amazing. So it makes you guys the perfect match. I love it. So this has been great, guys. Super informative. I love it. I mean, some exciting stuff that you guys are creating. I can't wait to continue to watch, everything that you guys do and, and build upon. And I think it's such an intriguing and interesting world that we live in and nothing really to fear. But before I let you go, we do something fun where we ask one word, one myth, and one habit. So whatever comes to mind, just blurt it out. What's one word that describes what the future of What's one word that describes where the future of creativity is headed?
Human.
Exciting.
YBA.
Yes.
Always inserting the brand. One myth. What's one myth about AI and content creation that people still believe but shouldn't?
End times.
Self-aware.
Technology does not execute itself.
I like that. What's one habit that has contributed most to your success as a founder, creative, or operator? Habit that you do personally.
Oh, personal habit.
Sleep. We know Matthew doesn't do much of that.
Right.
Well, none of us do, by the way. He's in Sao Paulo, he's in India, and I'm in New York. There's never those 3 dots aren't really going that long at any hour of the time. That's what I love about this. Meditation.
Meditation.
Okay.
I find listening, and I'm getting better at it. But the more I listen, the better I do.
So last, before I let you go, if a brand is listening today and they could do just one thing differently tomorrow to stay relevant in an AI-powered world, what would that be?
Produce more videos.
Call us.
I love it. YBA, guys. I'll leave all the details below so you guys can get in contact with these 3 amazing guys. Again, thank you to all 3 of you. This has been an amazing conversation. We could go on for hours. So thank you again.
Sacha, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sacha.
And everybody get the book.
Yeah, YBA.org.
I already ordered mine. No, we don't. I heard one.